Right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, super intelligent shades of the colour sky blue, pink, or however else you might identify. Who am I to say you're not any of those things? Alex McDonald is my guest today, and he identifies as being quite an athlete in a certain way, having done quite a surprising thing athletically on a number of counts, not the least of which being very impressive that he had the capacity, the ability physiologically to do so, and under the circumstances with which he did it. Quite stunning. So what I'm going to do is stop talking and let him start talking and tell us all about it. Alex.
Thank you very much, Bart. Well, look, the first thing I'll correct you on is, look, I don't classify myself as an athlete whatsoever. So I am just sort of your ordinary guy. But what I did manage to do, many would regard as quite extraordinary, which is I completed 5 marathons in 5 days, completely fasted. So think of a 5-day fast where I've had nothing but salt and water for that 5-day period. And every day on consecutive days, I covered the distance of a complete marathon, 42.2 kilometers. So in total, that was 212 kilometers over that 5-day period with zero energy intake. Now, the obvious question is, look, why? Like, why would anyone do such a thing? And for me, it was a demonstration to myself as much as anyone. Once I had learnt or dug into the science a little bit behind this, which was that when your body has the capability to tap into an enormous energy reserve, which is the fat that every single one of us carries on our body. Now, the reason that most people would think that it's absolutely impossible to do what I have done is because the mainstream mindset is set around the idea of what's called carb loading. So the idea, look, you need to have carbohydrates to be able to fuel your body for an extended period of time. Everyone would understand the narrative there that, look, the night before you complete even one marathon, you need to carb load, have a bowl of pasta and all of that sort of thing, which, look, does work, and a lot of people in the world do that. But what that is ignoring is that your body, to really simplify things, can have an alternative metabolism. So where you're relying on carbohydrates for your primary source of fuel, you are essentially tapping into or using your store of glycogen in your body, which is a very, very small fuel tank. To explain that, forgive me, Bart, I'll use calories to explain, because that is the metric that most people understand as a unit of measurement for energy in food. I completely agree with your views around how nonsensical that is, but forgive me just to explain this a little bit. So coming back to it, where the store of glycogen in the human body is tapped out at a maximum of about 2,000 calories of energy. So it doesn't matter how much you eat of carbohydrates prior to that, you cannot get more than 2,000 calories. Now, your fat stores, on the other hand, are significantly larger. So in my case, I have around about 100,000 calories of available energy on me. Now, I'm what most would classify as a very lean individual. I have about 14 to 15% body fat on me, and I still am carrying 100,000 calories. So the real kind of light bulb moment for me was understanding that if we can switch our metabolism to be plugging into that 100,000 calorie fuel tank rather than relying on the glycogen stores, it would inevitably seem like we have an enormous amount of energy and almost infinite amount. So how do you do that? Effectively, it's cut all the carbohydrates. Train your body to not use carbohydrates as a fuel, to be using your fat stores. And look, what I had learnt was 100,000 calories versus the 2,000 calories. In any given marathon, you'd be burning, depending on how fast you go, call it around 3,000 calories. So it's not even enough to get you through, which is why we need to be jamming the gels in and all the other junk that you need to get through that amount of volume. So for me, it was, right, forget about the carbs, use my 100,000 calories, and how far can I push it? So five marathons in 5 days is an extreme amount of energy to have to sort of use. Having zero intake means that there was no question about where that energy was coming from. It wasn't coming from anywhere, an exogenous source. It was not coming from my food. It must be coming from my body. And and being able to do that over a 5-day period also means that my body is having to call it self-regulate. So a lot of the concerns around doing what I did is around blood sugars. Like, where does your blood sugar go? Is it going to crash? Is it going to spike? What is going to happen when you do this? So with all of those questions and armed with a little bit of knowledge, it was, well, let's do this. Step 1, become fat adapted. Which took a number of months. And then once we have done that, let's see how far we can push this with the number of marathons. So, and to give you an idea, to strike out the idea that I'm some sort of exceptional athlete, my first ever marathon was the first marathon of this challenge. I have never even done a marathon before, attempting to do 5 in a row. So what I wanted to demonstrate is my energy resources here are enormous, but they're not unique to me. They're not unique to me from my ability. And this is something that is available to every individual. So whether you're running marathons or not, it's just the energy availability. Use it how you want, but you need to learn how you can, let's call it, adapt your metabolism to be able to tap into those energy reserves.
Incredible. What time did you run the first marathon in?
How fast was I going?
Yeah.
I wasn't particularly fast. So again, my strategy was get through the distance. So what am I trying to prove? It was the available energy and not around the speed.
Got it,
so there were 2 components to that, because one, in my training, I had issues with, look, I'd pull a muscle or, pull a calf or something. The last thing I wanted to do was to have an injury that was preventing me from achieving my objective, which was the demonstration of the energy reserves.
The ability to do the work. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So just do the work. So I was low and slow was how I was running. And my strategy was run to a heart rate. So if I'm running in what many would understand to be zone 2, so like just that, it is not a walk, it's a run, but it's sort of somewhere in between, but you can have a conversation while you're moving. And if I'm running at a heart rate around there, it does 2 things. One is it conserves my energy to a degree, because I've never done this before. No one has, so I don't know. And the other is it reduces my risk of severe injury to my muscles or anywhere else that may prevent me from completing my goal of the 5 marathons. So to answer your question, my first marathon I did in about 5.5 hours.
Awesome.
Yes. And then each marathon after that was about getting through my distance, just the distance. And so they were slower for the sort of 2, 3, 4. But of note, my second fastest of all of the marathons was actually my 5th marathon. So I think that speaks volumes to, look, I wasn't just limping over the line. I certainly had more energy than I needed, or than most would have expected to be able to finish like that.
Awesome. That would have been my next question. Answered. Very, very good. So with that in mind, anyone who knows anything about marathon running, athletics of any kind, exercise physiologists, they'll all tell you that under no circumstances would it be a good idea, or is it even likely that it would be possible that you could run one marathon without trucking carbs down your neck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clearly, you didn't get the memo on this.
Well, maybe I just chose to ignore it, but I saw another memo that said, if you want to have the energy to be able to get through that, you need to ignore that memo, that initial memo, and say, ignore the carbohydrates, train your body to be able to tap into those fuel reserves. And now, and in my digging around, you'll understand the science a lot better than I would, but it's not as simple as you either run purely 100% on carbohydrates or you run 100% on fat. It's not that, it's a spectrum in between. Yes. So at all times I am burning glycogen and I am burning fat, and everybody is, but it's the rate at which you're able to convert your fat and carbs to energy, so the rate of oxidization, that is really, really relevant. So, just to throw some numbers at you, when someone is, let's call it carbohydrate dependent, they're burning they're able to convert their carbohydrates at around 2.8 or 2.9 9 grams per minute into energy, and fat is around sort of 0.2 grams per minute. Now, once you become fat adapted, that flips entirely, and basically they level out. Sort of 1.3 grams per minute is the rate of oxidization of fat and carbohydrates when you are fat adapted. Now, keeping in mind, the rate of your conversion is talking about the rate of your depletion. So you're getting an improvement in both of those when you are fat adapted, because you're reducing the depletion of your small fuel tank and you're increasing the rate of utilization of your large fuel tank, which is why that I certainly didn't have any situations where running, like getting through my 5 marathons, where I hit the wall, so to speak, because my level of energy was not being, my level of consumption of energy was not being matched by my body's ability to convert my fuel source to energy.
Right. So in preparation for this, what sounds to me to be quite a ghastly thing to even try and do, yet it seems like you've done it without too much distress at all, interestingly, despite the fact that everybody in the world knows that what you're talking about is quite impossible. Oh, is it? Okay, good. It's be very interesting to find out what you did by way of your training build-up. How was that structured? What kind of volume were you doing? At what kind of intensities? Paint us this picture.
Sure. So in order to do this, it's not as though anyone can rock up at the start line and say, right, 5 marathons, here we go, we're going to do this. You've got to do your homework and you have to put the prep in. But the prep is 2 sides. One is the obvious one. Look, you need to train your body in terms of the exercise with the load for training that, which for me, I had run sort of half marathons, but it had been 10 years since I had run at all, but when I started doing this. So I'd be going on training runs and they would be literally 2 or 3 kilometers. Like it was just start slow and like start small and work our way up. I started about a year out training wise, but I did work that up to be sort of at the pointy end with a few weeks to go. I was averaging up around sort of 100 kilometers per week. So ideally doing that 60 to 100 kilometers per week as just volume. But again, very slow. And I would not be concerned so much about the distance I was covering in my training runs. It was time on the legs. So I would say, right, set my clock. I'm going for a 3-hour run today. However far I get, doesn't matter. It's just we're running. So that was my idea. And it was running to heart rate as well. So training my body to be just efficiently working at a particular heart rate, again, with my sole goal in mind. So that was the training piece. But the biggest, and I would argue the most important part of all of it, was getting my metabolism to where I needed it to be. So that involved 100% getting my nutrition right and dialing in to make sure that my body was completely fat adapted. So for me, it was, look, I've been low carb or avoiding carbohydrates as much as possible since 2010 is when I started. So we're talking, what's that, sort of near 15 years now. And arguably I was fat adapted. I have been for a very long time. But I think like a lot of people, you start out low carb. It's like, let's cut out the easy stuff, which is the sugar and the, maybe the rice and pasta. You feel amazing. And then you sort of slide along the scale and you kind of improve much more. And that led me to, within the last definitely 5 years, I've been almost to 100% carnivore. So because it was, the further I avoided all of that other stuff and the more I concentrate on carnivore, the better I felt. So the big thing was, particularly on this, very, very strict, because when I say carnivore, it's, look, I'm 95%, 98% compliant, because life is life and, you have to enjoy yourself with the, just how it is. But training wise, call it 3 to 4 months out, it was absolutely super strict on a 0 carbohydrate across my lips. And I was making sure purely carnivore and working my way there to ensure that I was fat adapted. So I did have some help. So I lent into quite I would say my team of experts. So I had the likes of Dr. Jessica Turton, who is a phenomenal dietitian in this space. She was very, very helpful around ensuring I was doing things the right way. I had Dr. Paul Mason, that was my lead doctor. He's very, 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 very intelligent guy, very well versed in this space, as a sounding board to make sure that I was doing things the right way. And I also I have to send some credit to another doctor, Dr. Ian Lake, who's a GP in the UK. And he planted the seed for me to do this. So he completed 100 miles in 5 days. So that's about 4 marathons. He did that with 7 others in 2020. But he did that as a type 1 diabetic, completely fasted. So different approach, but I thought, look, the fact that he could do it, that gave me some confidence. But I also tapped into him. So I hit him up. We had some meetings talking about how do we go about the preparation. But my logic was sound. All of that was just more around building confidence to make sure that I haven't missed anything. And to keep it as simple as possible, if you just stick to pure carnivore and do this for a period of time, you will be fat adapted, and you will have these energy reserves on your body that already exist there will suddenly become available to you.
Awesome. Again, as I said earlier, incredible achievement, absolutely incredible. I can kind of hear in the back of my mind the voices of what I imagine people out there who think they know everything in this area of exercise physiology, all saying, oh yeah, okay, well, he's achieved 5-hour marathons. Could he run a competitive marathon, let alone 5 in a row, without eating carbs? Because we know, they say, that you remove carbs and performance goes down. Okay, number one, I am very, very loathed to refer to completing a marathon over pretty much any speed that's reasonable as being a lowered performance. Let's not forget this was absolutely the peak of Alex's performance to date in terms of work requirement. So we have no baseline of, well, how fast could Alex be? So I'd like to throw a challenge to you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, without changing anything about your diet or the fact that we do it fasted, only changing some of the training principles, do you think it's possible we could get you to a point where you could, say, do a 3-hour marathon?
Well, so it's a very punchy goal. That's, like you said, it's a very difficult one for me to answer because, again, I have no baseline. I'm not a runner. And I chose my
anyone that's done 5 marathons as a runner in my book. So
yeah, well, I may have to change that. Look, I might have to say that I am a runner, but having never done one before, nor ever done it for speed, it's a very different thing. So it's and look, I would love to round this out by saying, right, well, I've done my 5 and now I've done a 3-hour. It's kind of like, how do you like them apples kind of thing? Where do you want to go with this? I think that would be a very powerful message. But
well, that's why I thought I'd try and bait you.
Yeah, try and get me there. Look, I'm not going to rule it out just yet, but the commitment to do that is enormous, because anyone that's run any marathons, a 3-hour marathon is quite an achievement. It's kind of like saying, like if I'm a golfer, right, I can learn to play golf and get through a round okay, but then to be able to shoot under par is a very, very different thing. There's only certain people in the world that can do that for a whole bunch of reasons, no matter how much effort they put in. So being a non-runner, it would be difficult for me to get there, I believe, because of the commitment to do so. But look, what I would like is if people can understand, look, I have done this as a non-athlete and have been able to achieve something that most people regard as very impossible, or even at the very least impressive. I'll throw the gauntlet out there to a genuine runner and say, look, is there someone out there that would be willing to take this on, that has run around those marks? They're doing the training, have done so, because it might take 5 years for me to do the training to get to it.
That's mainly why I didn't stipulate when you should do this 3-hour marathon. I just said, do you think there's any feasible possibility that we could achieve that at some point if you had the right coaching? Because, of course, part of this challenge would be that I would offer to be that coach.
Yes. Okay. Well, look, I'm not going to never say never, but the commitment to do that. And look, I don't believe that running marathons is a particularly healthy way to live my life
No, I
either.
agree. You shouldn't do it.
No. So for me to take that on would mean I'd be doing, successive marathon training. I'll be dedicating my life to a lot of running, which is something that is a time commitment. And I've got young kids and a family and that sort of thing. So,
Sure.
Look, I won't say no just for now, but let's let's
something we
park
could
that.
talk about behind the scenes anyway. And you might be pleasantly surprised to learn that if you did have me as your marathon preparation coach, you would actually end up doing vastly less volume of training than almost anybody in the world would suggest. The reason that they are suggesting the amount of volume that they are suggesting is because of their lack, actually, of understanding of the energetics of exercise physiology. So, yeah, you would actually be doing a lot less training than you think you would be doing. But that's just a teaser to throw out there that so that we could.
So if I consider it in my lifestyle,
I tell you what, I mean, the reason I'm throwing the challenge out there is because I'd love to see this done.
Yeah.
Because then we can say not only can someone who doesn't even identify as an athlete run a marathon in 3 hours, but he can do that fasted, and he can do it a couple of days in a row, if not 5.
Yes.
Because he's trained appropriately and specifically to achieve that physiological goal, with the caveat that both of us, you and I, Alex, are publicly saying, don't try this at home, kids, because this is not a good idea.
Yes.
However, to prove the point and to be, oh, look, here's an N=1 case of something that's quite impossible, according to most, not only being possible, but being knocked over, that'd be great.
Yes. I love the idea. Look, my view with the N=1 is N=1 experiments don't prove anything, but they can absolutely disprove an hypothesis. So if we were able to achieve this, well, what I have done with my 5 marathons is absolutely disproved the belief that you have to consume anything over that period to be able to cover the amount of volume that I did. So my N=1 strikes through that pretty.
You've hit the nail on the head there, I think, Alex, in that to disprove impossible, all that is required is 1. Yes. N=1.
Correct.
So it has that value.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Good. So from there, I don't really know where to go. I think that rounds it out.
I can tell you where we'd like to go. One is that in doing this, look, I had some forethought. It was like, right, as soon as I do this, everyone just writes me off as a nutter that goes, well, you're just mentally a lunatic, and that's why you've done it. Sure. So what I wanted to do was to accumulate as much data as I possibly could, because there are 2 reasons. One is data doesn't lie. Data doesn't apply for everyone, but it's my data, and it's the first set of data that shows anyone that's done this, look what happens to your body. So if there's a way to track it, I tried to track it. There was some other stuff I would have liked to have done, but it involved some expensive kit, which I didn't have at my disposal. Look, I even tried to get some universities involved to say, look, would you write a paper on this? Because I'm going to do it. So, stick some needles in me, do whatever tests you need to be able to do this. And the pushback was, look, great idea, love it, but getting it through ethics approval is going to be very difficult. And not only that, might take 12, 18 months to do so. And I was like, look, I'm raring to go. I don't want to be on someone else's clock. So, thank you, but sort of no thanks.
Right.
The silly part about it is the ethics approval is I've gone to them. They're not recruiting, but that is what it is. You have to go through the right channels. Yeah. But so failing that, it was, look, let's test all this stuff myself. So what data did I get? For the entire time I wore a CGM, so I tracked my blood glucose, so I can tell you to the minute what happened over those 5 days. Yeah. I also tracked my blood glucose levels through finger prick blood testing. And I tracked my ketones, similar thing. So I would track those before each marathon, after each marathon. So I call it morning, afternoon, and then evening. And I did that for each of the days, and for a period before and after, just to get a bit of baseline and kind of a bit of reset. In addition to that, I did like urine testing, which is arguably not the most accurate for some of this stuff, but either way, it does give me, whether the numbers themselves speak volumes, it does give me a baseline comparison to see whether things are out of whack. So that was testing the likes of, say, like my hydration, pH level, also my ketones again, but levels of magnesium, vitamin C, all of that sort of stuff. So I've got all that data over the period. Before I did all my marathons, I had a full blood panel. So Dr. Paul Mason kindly wrote me, I said, just test anything you want to test. And so he did that day before the marathon, I did that, including a full body DEXA scan to give me complete body composition. Then after my 5 marathons, day 6, call it, I had another full blood panel and I had another DEXA scan. So to show what my change in composition of my body was. So I've got some fascinating sort of insights out of all of that, which I'll run through at a high level if you'd like. Starting with blood sugar, that is an obvious one. Everyone's like, well, you're gonna have some dips and you're not gonna sort of survive. The reality from my data was rock solid the whole way through. So it averaged, obviously with the CGM, it blips around a little bit, but it was confirmed with my blood testing, which it averaged anywhere between 4.5 to 5.5 millimoles a litre. So pretty solid, no real spikes. The only spikes I had were, according to the CGM, around sort of the 6 a.m. dawn effect, which I had through all my training runs. And even while fasted, we still saw my blood sugars spike in preparation for the day. My ketones, a lot of people get obsessed around ketones in the kind of low carb community. My view is that higher is not better. I don't really care. It's, look, if my body's creating ketones, it's doing its job. But, if I get my nutrition right, ketones are just sort of a side effect. But knowing that they're there was providing me some confidence that my body is at least metabolizing in a way that I would like it to do so, to be able to fuel me.
Sure.
So my ketone levels, full carnivore in training, prior to all of this, I could never get my ketone levels, or they never were any higher than 0.1 to 0.3 millimoles per litre. And again, I've been fat adapted for a very long time. But then once I started my marathons, they ramped up quite a bit. So we went from, where are we? So we went from sort of 0.1 to 0.8 to 1.1, 1.8, all the way up to 4.3 is where I finished with my ketone levels.
Right. Confirming absolutely that what you have done is tap into your stored fat supplies to produce the energy equivalents required for that work over those 5 days. Well, shocked me.
Yeah. But that's it. That's my data. That's exactly as expected, but it was nice with that belief that was going to happen, that it actually did.
All right. Furthermore, we'll talk behind the scenes, because I will write that paper happily and send it for publication.
Sure.
Yeah.
The one other point was, look, everyone says, look, how much weight did you lose? Because I'll throw my hand up now. I believe I've done the most extreme version of eat less and move more. I challenge anyone to do, well, I wouldn't challenge anyone. It's a terrible idea. But
again, this is not a good idea.
No, definitely not a good idea. But I have done it because it happened to coincide with what I'm doing here. Now, over those 5-day period, I lost in total, according to DEXA, which is very, very accurate, a total of 3 kilos. And of that, I lost 1 kilo of fat, 2 kilos of, as DEXA would describe, to be lean tissue, which is the combination of muscle fiber, glycogen, and water, being those other kilos. So I lost 3 kilos. As expected, I would lose some. But the idea that I only burnt 1 kilo of fat with that much effort and like over that period was, I think, speaks volumes to how efficient your body is. And look, within a week, I'd got it all back again too. So it was a blip on the radar as far as all that. And one interesting anecdote to tell you how accurate the DEXA scan is. The report that I had, or when I was getting my DEXA, the guy that was running it said, "Listen, were you carrying something in your left hand?" I said, "Oh, actually, I was. I had a water bottle for most of it, just on me in case." He said, "Yeah, I can tell, because your body composition changed on your left arm more than it did on your right due to the extra weight that I was carrying through that period." So, just a little bit interesting.
Right. That's the worst excuse for one bicep bigger than the other I've ever heard. Are you denying it?
Well, it's according to DEXA during those 5 days. So look, my baseline tells another story.
All right, good.
Yes.
Well, okay. So, and as I say, incredible achievement. What's wrong with you? Do it again. Do it faster, because we want to see the data. I will happily write that paper and submit it to the journal of our choosing.
Sure.
Because that's the kind of case study that would interest the area, the exercise physiology nuts. I used to be one of them. I used to be an active researcher in the field of exercise physiology at the beginning of my academic career. And I still have a number of contacts there that I can go directly to and say, what do you think of this paper? Can we get this thing through genuinely, etc.? All of that. So that can happen and should happen.
Yeah.
Other than that, how can folks help you, support you? Thank you for sharing this incredible story with us today.
Well, look, there's two things. My big message here is around understanding that there is an alternative playbook to the one that most subscribe to. So you can have your arguments elsewhere as to which one you think is better. My job here is to just shine a light that there is another way. And then knowing there's another way, you've got an alternative. Now, how do I explore and exploit that? So that's up to everyone else to run with it. But first job is understand there is another way. To find out how to do it and how I went about it, please head to my website, ketomarathons.com. I've got everything on there, including all of my data, plus videos and photos of me and all that stuff, and how I felt and everything I tracked and all that stuff. So to as much as anything prove that I've done it and walk you through how to go about, or how I went about doing it. So if you'd like to learn more, go there. Plus, I have a whole list of resources of which I've filtered out in what I find to be great resources in this space. That's not just the silly stuff you can often sort of fall into. So go to my website, ketomarathons.com, to find that. I post on socials as well at Keto Marathons on Insta, keto_marathons on X. But either way, it's just a source of information. Please share it, because I want the message to be out there that something that was deemed impossible has been done. So let's have the world and the community ask the question, how? Because if you can answer that question, how, it'll, let's just say it piques people's interest to say, well, maybe I should look into this a little bit more, because on first blush, this can be dismissed as quackery, but when you do something as extreme as I have done, it cuts through a lot of that. So it doesn't matter if you're the mum and dad just trying to lose a few kilos and go, is this real? I think it answers that question. But I would also argue at the pointy end of it, where call it the top scientists in the world that say, no, it's impossible. I think they need to rethink their thinking, or open their thinking a little bit to say, well, we need to explore this. So I'm hoping that what I've done is being able to penetrate sort of both ends of that spectrum a little bit, and move us forward in terms of our understanding of nutrition and particularly how the body works, and how we can all tap into what is our bodies are amazing machines. So let's use them the best, and how they have been designed to be used.
Brilliantly said. Best summary I've heard in a long time. There's nothing further that I would add to that, other than to give you any final opportunity, any last thought or comment you want to make, because you'll close us off being the guest, as it were.
Well, thank you. So yeah, my last thing is look into it, look into being fat adapted. How can I do it? And then it's up to you to be able to figure out how you would like to best use that in your day. You don't have to run marathons, but what I'm hoping is, look, even if it comes down to breaking that narrative that before your kids run a 100-meter race for their athletics carnival, you need to give them a bag of lollies. They're not going to run out of energy. Your body's got more than enough than it needs. So let's sort of start to shift that narrative more to a sensible approach of getting your nutrition right, eating well, avoiding all the processed garbage, and getting ourselves back on track. So thank you very much, Bart, for your time.
Stunning. Brilliant. Thank you.